Well, welcome to this conversation between experts looking at challenges and potential solutions for our clients on making a lasting impact. This episode is a look at social impact investing, the trends that we're seeing, and how we might be able to help with some of those desires. We have three amazing people on the panel. We have Amy, Tricia, and Rachel. Amy serves as the Chief Impact Officer and General Counsel of Impact Foundation, and they focus on making it easy to put charitable capital to work for economic, social, and spiritual transformation all over the world. She also describes herself as a recovering attorney and the author of a boring law article and a study of the metaphysics of salvation, which doesn't sound boring at all to me. She lives in Kansas City with her husband Marshall and three adorable high-energy kids, so welcome, Amy. Tricia serves as the Vice President of Philanthropy and Giver Services at TrustBridge Global Foundation and is also a trustee of Stewardship America, for which we're very grateful. She holds a Legrand diploma from Cordon Bleu, so I'm sorry if I've said that wrong and butchered my French and said a terrible pun, but I think that's amazing. Tricia and her husband Bob have been married for 26 years and have 5 grown children and one amazingly spirited granddaughter. She enjoys cooking, and I'm sure everyone else enjoys her cooking too, international travel and helping people to find the bravery to live the life God calls them to, and we're very happy to have you, Tricia. Finally, and last but not least at all, Rachel is our legal advisor at Stewardship. Rachel came to us with over 10 years of experience advising private clients and charities. She now works primarily with the Philanthropy Services team and helps our major donors to make complex gifts efficiently and tax effectively, and lives with her husband Derek and 2 wonderful boys in South East London. Thank you for being with us as well, Rachel.
Thanks.
So with all of that said, and us knowing each other a little bit better, I'd love to just get into the meat of the conversation. And the first question really we have is for Amy. Amy, would you mind just kind of explaining to us a little bit what impact investment actually is and how it might be different to other things that we've heard of, like ethical investment or ESG?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So the written definition of impact investing is intentionally placing capital to achieve a measurable social and environmental impact. And because we're faith-driven, we also add a spiritual impact to that. ESG investing is not quite as intentional in the sense that you're not placing capital to achieve an outcome. You're really applying screens over an investment portfolio. So oftentimes ESG involves an index fund or a selection of broad stocks and bonds, and then you screen out companies that don't meet certain environmental, the S and S, social or governance criteria. And environmental is really the heaviest weighted in that. So screening out is more common in ESG. Sometimes you'll see funds that are actually taking an active stewardship role as shareholders. They're engaging in shareholder advocacy. But with impact investing, we're using capital to make selections about companies that we think either the means by which they're accomplishing something or the product or service they're providing really make people's lives better. Maybe they're pioneering a new way to get electricity to homes, or maybe they're running a restaurant that employs people who would otherwise be marginally employed or underemployed and giving them job training. So impact investing is intended to be more active, more engaged, and that's why measurement is so important, because we need to begin to understand what of our practices are working and where should we try to redeploy our funds.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And maybe this is a question for Rachel, but given that, when do you think it's appropriate for a philanthropist to consider giving through social impact investing rather than maybe making a traditional grant or thinking about one of those other avenues?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I think it's really important for philanthropists to see impact investment as another sort of tool in their philanthropic toolkit alongside grant making. There are some real advantages of doing impact investment. For example, recycling funds. If you make a grant, that's it. The funds have gone. If you make an impact investment, God willing, one day the money comes back to you, and then you can make another one, and then another one, and do lots of good over and over to different causes. There's also the benefit to the investees of you offering patient capital. with perhaps more flexibility than commercial sources of capital, or perhaps these are people who couldn't get commercial capital. And you can enable a recipient organisation to scale up, to do more of its good work, perhaps to purchase a property so that it can grow, or to have working capital, or to match fund government grants. There are all kinds of ways in which social investment can really be catalytic for perhaps a social organisation or a charity that you're investing in. It's also just a matter of, no pun intended, but good stewardship. So why is it that we think it's better to sort of invest our charitable funds in stocks and shares? Why wouldn't we want to put our charitable funds to work now, doing good right now, not just at the point when we eventually decide what grants we want to make? So I would just encourage those with charitable funds set aside in a donor advised fund, or perhaps in their own charity, just to think about what good that money could be doing right now.
Yeah, it sounds so innovative, and this is kind of a question for the whole panel. But are there any specific trends that we're seeing at the moment that may be interesting to people listening, or anything that you're particularly excited about? Tricia, maybe we'll come to you first because we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, I think one of the limitations, and one of the things Rachel was talking about, is when you're doing grants, those are charitable entities. They always are charitable entities. Impact investing actually allows a little bit more flexibility in terms of the types of work that can get done, because impact investing, even with like heavily spiritual components or things that, like Amy was talking about, like employment and things like that, can be done with charitable capital to non-charitable entities if they have the right type of charitable work embedded in what they're doing. And so it actually opens up the world a little bit more and offers a bit more flexibility sometimes in the way that people want to support that type of work. So I personally see a trend towards that type of flexibility. People want to be able to do more with their charitable capital.
Amy?
We can see in the overall move to impact investing, it's doubled every year for the last 4 years. At least in the US. Doubling every 4 years is pretty amazing. In terms of using charitable capital to place in for-profit companies, we started in 2016 and we got one of two reactions. One was, and that's all we do, by the way, use charitable capital to place money in for-profit companies and as loans to nonprofits. We got one of two reactions. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Where have you been all my life? I've been wanting to do this. Or the other reaction, which was, I think that might be illegal. And now 4.5 years in, we're getting a little bit of a different reaction. We don't get the, I think that's illegal reaction nearly as much. It's more of a, I never thought of that. Tell me more about that. That's anecdotal, but I think the trend in the larger arena to moving into impact investing has people thinking differently about the appropriate uses of charitable capital. Again, not to replace giving and philanthropy, but to complement it.
It's interesting, Amy, what you say about the US market. I think it would be fair to say that the impact investing market in the UK is a little bit less developed. I think we're a few years behind you, but it's definitely growing. There's definitely more awareness that we're seeing, Hannah, amongst our donors and our recipients. And there are organisations here in the UK like Big Society Capital that are really trying to get this moving. So hopefully we'll be catching you up, Amy.
We've made a hint towards speaking about this in a global sense and the opportunities that there are to move across borders. But there must be some challenges as well. So Tricia, what are the challenges that you see as part of your work at TrustBridge, and potentially how could TrustBridge and people like you guys help with those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're moving money across borders, there's very kind of a unique set of challenges that come along with that. When you're talking about domestic, even just giving, just grant making, domestic givers, domestic charity, domestic type impact investing and things like that, it's a lot simpler. But when you start moving money across country borders, it gets a little bit sticky sometimes. So, even something that on the impact investing side, like Amy had talked about, like a loan to a charity, which could, if they couldn't pay it back, you could convert it back into a grant or something like that. That can be quite simple if you're doing it domestically. But like if a US giver is trying to do that with an international group, there's a whole different set of regulations that are required just to do the grant, just not even considering doing something like that with an impact investment. And then, there's a lot of kind of in-country or recipient country expertise that has to be employed, in certain jurisdictions. If you're doing a sustainability loan to a charity, it has to be registered with the government, and there are certain thresholds that kick in. And so you kind of need someone who can navigate that sort of thing. And in certain places there's capital controls, and to repatriate that investment money requires permissions from the government, especially if it's a risky currency, converting to a hard currency, things like that. So just having someone in the mix that understands some of those things it becomes, I think, more salient. And so that's people like us, that's what we do. So we just help people navigate some of that complexity.
That's brilliant. Before we started the call, we were talking a little bit about excellence and expertise and just bringing in those voices. If someone's considering kind of a leap into this area, Tricia, what would you say to them about going it alone versus finding someone to come and support them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the relationships, like if it's a UK person considering doing this kind of investment, they really do need to connect with Stewardship, because all of us sort of know each other and work together. So if I can't find a solution for an international giver, or Amy's having problems finding a solution for a US giver, or we all can talk to each other too. So there's kind of power, I think, in the connectivity of all of our different groups and the expertise that we all have. And so we can just employ that on behalf of the givers who are trying to accomplish something, or on behalf of the charitable groups that are trying to raise capital. And so, yeah, I think I would just say, don't go it alone. Don't try to navigate all that yourself. Get connected, and we all do our best to help people out.
Yeah, that's right, Tricia. I mean, we have already worked together at Stewardship and Trustbridge on inbound and outbound impact investment. We both into the UK and going from the UK to overseas. We'd love to be doing more of that at Stewardship for UK resident donors, and also through Stewardship America for UK resident donors with US liability, so perhaps US citizens who are seconded over to London for a period. So if that's you listening, then we would love to talk to you.
There's also power in working together through Stewardship and Trustbridge and Impact Foundation in getting to know other investors who are doing this. It's not just the issues of currency and placing capital, but investing well, especially in another country or a culture that we don't know well, requires some hard work, honestly. Diligence, sourcing deals, getting to know the people on the ground, learning how to invest well so that we are helping and not just creating another form of dependency. All these things are issues that we've been working through for a long time. And if we don't have the answer, we can certainly connect you with somebody who has worked it through.
Amazing. Thank you, Amy. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to blindside the panel and ask them a question that we haven't prepared. But if you could say one exciting thing that you've seen, say, in the last 12 months in the world of impact investing, one story or one thing that's grown out of this movement, what would it be?
Yeah. So 2020 has been a difficult year, and it's not been equally difficult for everybody in every place. And one of the things that I've been super encouraged to see is those who are surviving, thriving, even in the midst of all of the stuff that's happening in 2020, have been banding together to make capital available to those who are struggling. We've seen COVID relief funds come together for investment, for granting. So that's been super encouraging. And then the other thing that I am most excited about is the ways in which investors are beginning to work together better to accomplish something that they couldn't by working alone. So there's something called the Faith-Driven Investor Marketplace that is getting launched for exactly that purpose, to learn from each other, to diligence deals together, to invest together, so that we can accomplish more working together than we could on our own.
That's good.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. And part of this faith-driven marketplace that I think is really encouraging is that there are projects that have already been sort of funded and people know about, but they have these champions for these projects, and it kind of gets the word out to other people who are like-minded to kind of co-labor, collaborate, and it just makes that world a little bit broader. You know, there's some really interesting projects out there. People are super creative in finding ways to, help farmers that are employing Roma in Romania, or creating jobs in Indonesia, or there's no limit to the creativity, but sometimes there's just not a place for people to know about these things. And what Amy's talking about is a kind of a really interesting move in a good direction.
That's good.
Yeah, it's interesting because we hadn't conferred on this one at all, but mine also has a collaborative flavour. I think I was just really encouraged by the work we did earlier this year, Stewardship, in partnership with a group of Christian philanthropists, purchased Kingdom Bank, which is in itself a really exciting opportunity to enable more funding to be released into Christian ministries and so on. But the way that was structured as, again, a sort of collaboration between individuals, some of whom actually are US individuals, UK individuals, Stewardship itself, all working together to enable that investment for kingdom growth, was a really exciting thing.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you for that final surprise question. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of all of these topics, but if anyone's listening and they would like to know more about social impact investing, about the Impact Foundation, TrustBridge, or Stewardship America, then please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear your stories of if you have been impacted by any of these sorts of projects. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.